What is up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and we're about to get what I consider the first major video game release of 2025, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I'm definitely going to be doing a first impressions video this time next week. However, I'm not quite done with 2024 video games. So as I usually do, there's typically a gap between the last video game release of a year. In this case, it was, for me at least, it was Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and then the first major video game release of the year. Again, that's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And in that time, I typically try to play at least a few games that I missed from the prior year. And as a video game content creator, if I play games, but I don't make content on those games, did I really play them? So there are a few games that I've been playing the last couple of months that I still haven't brought up on this YouTube channel that I definitely want to touch on. So without further ado, let's rock. I think the easiest way to go about this video is just go into alphabetical order with these games, starting off with last year's game of the year, Astro Bot. Despite being a very big fan of platformers, longtime watchers of this channel know that platforming is my favorite genre of video games. Despite all of that, I had a hard time taking this game seriously, if I'm being honest. I did play the Playroom controller tutorial that came preloaded on all PS5s back in 2020, and it was really fun for what it was, but like I said, it's basically just a controller tutorial, so I didn't really take it seriously, and I honestly thought it was kind of funny that they were making a full game based on this character that I only knew from this tutorial. Apparently, I have not been paying attention because they've been making more of these games. I'm just not a big fan of VR and AR, so I just wasn't paying attention because all of the other games are those types of games. I definitely started paying attention when this game was nominated for a ton of game awards this year, and eventually, like I said earlier, it did win Game of the Year. And the way that I kind of sum up this game, and I'm not the only one, this is not a unique thought by any means, but this is basically Sony's Super Mario's Odyssey. And as much as I appreciated that game, I kind of got bored with Super Mario's Odyssey after a while. And I don't mean this as a bad thing, but that game was obviously made for kids, and that's fine. I play those types of games all the time. I feel like platforming as a genre does have a lot of games like that. But with this particular game, so Super Mario's Odyssey, I never really felt challenged by it. I never really felt like there was a moment where I didn't know where I was supposed to go, or I was fighting this particular enemy, and I never felt like I was ever challenged by it. And I assumed Astro Bot was going to be kind of more of the same, and the overall concept is definitely the same. You essentially just jump planet to planet, each with a different theme, to rescue these other bots. Those bots help you find your spaceship parts, which allow you to rebuild your crashed spaceship. But I was pleasantly surprised by how challenging this game was. Now, it's no Elden Ring by any means or anything like that, but it was way more challenging than I expected. It's way more challenging than Mario's Odyssey was, for sure. The platforming itself is pretty straightforward, but the boss battles can give you a bit of trouble. And by a bit, I mean, it might take you 3 or 4 tries instead of beating them immediately. Like, don't get me wrong, this game is not super difficult. It's just more challenging than I expected it to be. I appreciated the depth to this game. I played it for a little less than 20 hours, but you could easily push 30-ish hours into this if you're a completionist. There's a lot to collect. There's a lot of nuance to this game that I didn't expect, but I definitely appreciated. I really enjoyed Astro Bot. I would still have given Silent Hill 2 Remake the game of the year if it was up to me, but that game wasn't even nominated. I do want to point out that I am mostly an Xbox guy. I grew up with the console. I did have an original PlayStation, and then I eventually got a PlayStation 4 when God of War came out. But If you've played the PlayStation your whole life, you'll definitely get more out of Astro Bot than I did. This game definitely leans into the nostalgia of the PlayStation. So if you're more of a PlayStation guy than I am, maybe you will get more out of this game than I did. Moving on to another game that also did very well at the most recent Game Awards, and that's Balatro. I'm not a huge mobile gamer, but after this game pretty much cleaned up at the Game Awards, I did make an exception, and I'm glad I did because this game rules. It's basically Slay the Spire meets poker, which I didn't know I needed that combo, but I'm absolutely addicted to this game. Each run, you can choose a different deck that has different abilities. The more runs, the more decks you unlock. A run is divided into 8 antes with 3 blinds, each of an increasing difficulty. You have the small blind, the big blind, and the boss blind. Each blind, you have to score an increasing number of points by creating the best poker hands. The boss blinds have different abilities or debuffs that make scoring points more difficult. In between each blind, you can buy various cards which change the rules of the game. There's a ton of different cards, but the main 3 are basically, you have Joker cards that can drastically change the amount of points that you can get. You have planet cards that can level up a particular poker hand. And I would assume the band Saturdays at Your Place hate this game because there's also tarot cards. Those cards provide various one-time effects, such as changing cards to different suits. That joke is for a very specific group of people. I assume that's how you get YouTube famous, right? You make jokes that only make sense to a very small audience. And like I said earlier, I did not know I needed a game like Balatro, but I am addicted to this game ever since I first downloaded it. It triggers that part of my gamer brain that's just like always one more run. I'm always chasing that dragon. And out of all the games I'm going to talk about in this video, Balatro is easily the game that I've played the most. And I would say if you're only going to play one of these games I'm going to talk about in this video, I would definitely say Balatro should be the game that you play because it is very addicting. It's super, super fun. The next 2 games, I'll be very quick because I have not beaten either one of them as of recording. The first being Pepper Grinder, which is probably the most obscure game on this list, but it's actually the one that I was looking forward to checking out the most. Because like I said with Astro Bot, I love platformers, and this particular indie platformer gave me strong Celeste vibes based on the art style. So it's been on my radar for a while now. I think it was released in like late or mid-March, somewhere around there. And that was kind of during a point of last year when I was really neck deep into my Elden Ring obsession, kind of getting ready for the DLC. And so I never played it when it first was released, but I finally circled back to it recently. And maybe it was unfair to compare it to Celeste because that's an outstanding game, but I really kind of just got those vibes based on the art style, not necessarily, I didn't expect it to be that quality of game because there's only so many Celeste that come around, and Pepper Grinder was never really going to live up to those lofty expectations. But in this game, you play as this character named Pepper who has this drilling device, and most of the platforming revolves around you drilling through the terrain. And it's definitely an old school platformer with different levels in 4 different worlds that you have to complete. At the end of each world, you have a boss battle. First of all, this is a very, very short game. I only personally played it for about 2-ish hours. I beat the first 2 bosses and a couple of the levels in World 3 before I called it quits, but you could easily beat this in about 3 or 4 hours. It is only $15 though, so it is priced accordingly, so that's good. And overall, it is a good game. Just because I didn't finish it doesn't mean that I don't think it's a good game. I just felt like the drill platforming just wasn't my thing. I flew through the levels, literally beat most of the levels that I beat in less than 2 minutes. It happens very, very quickly. Now, there are other things that you can collect in the levels, like these gold coins that you can collect that I didn't bother replaying levels to get more gold coins. There are things that you can buy in the shop. So there are things to collect, very similar, maybe not to the depth of a game like Astro Bot, but there is stuff to collect during this game. The boss battles are way more challenging than the levels, but not engaging enough for me to want to carry on. I did really dig the art style, and the music is pretty cool as well. Again, I do think that this is a good game, I'm sure speedrunners are getting a kick out of it right now because it does feel like a game that would be very fun to speedrun. It just wasn't for me, and that's okay. Again, I don't think this is necessarily a bad game. I just really couldn't get into it. And it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise because pulling the plug on Pepper Grinder allowed me more time with the next game, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. That being said, I am only a handful of hours into this game, so this is very like first impressions. And man, after about 5-ish hours, I feel really bad for this game that it did get more buzz. Now, I believe it was nominated for a few game awards for whatever that's worth, but this game is a very cool Metroidvania platformer game where you play as Sargon, a member of a warrior group called the Immortals, who are on a mission to rescue the kidnapped Prince Ghazan. The Lost Crown has your typical Metroidvania stuff like an open map that you have to jump, slide, and air dash to travel between platforms. There are shortcuts and secret rooms, and players must solve puzzles to progress. Of course, there are areas of the map you can't explore because you need to unlock a certain tool or skill. So it felt like you're constantly exploring and then kind of backtracking when you hit an area you can't progress through. I really appreciated that it had a good mix of platforming and combat. It doesn't seem to lean hard one way or the other. Again, I'm only a few hours into this game, so I'm assuming there's a lot to this game. I at least hope that there's a lot to this game that I haven't really experienced yet, but so far so good. I have been really impressed with The Lost Crown. This game is beautiful to look at, especially during the cutscenes. I also just really dug the art style of it. I love the dialogue style of this game, and many others. Is not something new, obviously. We've seen it most recently with a game like Hades or even Nine Souls, where you see the character's avatar while the dialogue scrolls by. I always just think that looks really cool. Speaking of Nine Souls, I would say that that game's a little bit more difficult than The Lost Crown has been. But again, I'm not very far into this game, so I expect it's going to get a little bit more difficult. But the boss battles in Nine Souls are pretty difficult. And the boss battles in The Lost Crown, at least the couple of bosses that I've fought so far, have not been that difficult. But again, so far so good. I'm really enjoying my time with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. But as always, those are just my thoughts on Astro Bot, Balatro, Pepper Grinder, and the Prince of Persia: The Last Crown. Just behind the scenes, this little bit has taken me a few tries because I keep forgetting the names of the video games I just talked about. I'm leaving all this in. And if you like this video, definitely smash that like button, as the kids say. Consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you're notified every time I post another video. I try to post weekly gaming related content. So if you like that type of content, which you obviously do if you've made it this far in the video, definitely consider subscribing and dinging that bell. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy. And we were just talking, and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?